Forget the romanticized ballrooms of Bridgerton or the polished halls of Downton Abbey. If you were dropped into a genuine Victorian home today, you wouldn't be marveling at the architecture, you'd be fighting for your life. From walls painted with poison and milk preserved with embalming fluid, to a beauty routine that slowly rots your skin, the 19th century home was a domestic minefield. You have 24 hours to survive the comforts of the past. The clock starts now. Can you make it to tomorrow morning? The morning, waking up in a toxic box. The first thing that hits you isn't the light, it's the cold. You wake up shivering under a heavy pile of wool blankets, but the dampness seems to have settled into your very bones. You are in a London townhouse, circa 1870. The fire in the grate died out hours ago, and without central heating, the temperature inside your bedroom hovers just above freezing. You can see your breath in the air. You instinctively reach for a glass of water on the bedside table, but you stop. A thin layer of ice has formed on the surface. You slide out of bed, your feet landing on a rug that feels gritty with coal dust. That's the second thing you notice, the smell. It is a thick, cloying mixture of stale smoke, unwashed bodies, and something faintly metallic. You walk toward the window to let in some fresh air, but when you pull back the heavy velvet drapes, the room doesn't get much brighter. Outside, a pea super, a toxic blend of chimney smoke and river mist, chokes the street, blocking out the sun. Opening the window would only invite the soot inside, covering your furniture in a layer of London black. Turning back to the room, you admire the vibrant green wallpaper featuring an intricate floral pattern. It's beautiful, fashionable, and undeniably vivid. It is also killing you. That specific shade, known as Scheele's green, is made using copper arsenite. Every time the wind rattles the window frames or you brush against the wall, microscopic particles of arsenic flake off and float into the air. You're essentially breathing in rat poison with every inhale. By the end of the day, you might develop a headache and a dry throat, never suspecting that your luxurious bedroom walls are slowly shutting down your organs. It is time to get dressed, a process that is a workout in itself. But first, hygiene. There is no bathroom down the hall. Instead, you must use the chamber pot stored inside a wooden commode or under the bed. The reality of 19th century sanitation hits you instantly. You are sleeping mere inches away from your own waist. Later, a maid will carry this night soil downstairs, risking cholera and typhoid. But for now, the stench is your morning wake-up call. You move to the washstand. You pour water from a pitcher into a ceramic bowl. It's freezing cold. If you are a woman of status, you might reach for your cosmetics to brighten your pale complexion. You pick up a bottle of Bloom of Nanan, a popular face wash. It promises youthful skin, but the primary ingredient is lead. As you pat it onto your face, the lead begins its work, damaging your nerves, causing your gums to recede, and eventually leading to wrist drop or madness. But for now, you just look fashionably pale. Dressed in layers of restrictive fabric that weigh nearly 15 pounds, you head downstairs for breakfast, navigating a staircase that is steep, narrow, and poorly lit by gas lamps. These lamps hiss quietly, burning oxygen and releasing carbon monoxide into the unventilated hallway. You feel slightly dizzy, but you blame it on the tight corset or the hunger. You have survived the bedroom, but the kitchen, the most dangerous room in the house, awaits. The breakfast table, a feast of fakes. You descend the stairs, the heavy fabric of your clothes rustling in the quiet house. You enter the dining room where a maid has laid out a spread that looks undeniably appetizing. The silverware is polished to a mirror shine, the china is delicate, and the aroma of hot tea fills the air. You are starving. But as you pull out your chair and sit down, you're unknowingly entering a war zone where the enemy is your own grocery list. In the 21st century, you worry about GMOs or high fructose corn syrup. Here, you have to worry about actual poison disguised as staples. You start with a cup of tea, the fuel of the empire. You pour the dark liquid into your cup and add a splash of milk. It looks creamy and rich. You take a sip. It tastes strangely sweet, but not from sugar. In the mid-19th century, particularly in cities like New York and London, milk is often swill milk, produced by diseased cows fed on the hot, fermenting waste from whiskey distilleries. This milk is naturally thin and bluish, so dairymen thicken it with chalk, plaster of Paris, or even mashed calf brains to give it that creamy texture. To prevent it from spoiling in the heat, they don't use refrigeration. They add borax or formaldehyde, the same chemical used to embalm corpses. You're essentially drinking a mild preservation fluid with your morning caffeine. Next, you reach for a slice of bread. The Victorians are obsessed with white bread. It's a status symbol separating the rich from the poor. The loaf on your table is impossibly white. You butter a slice and take a bite. It feels heavy in your gut, almost like a stone. That's because the flour has been cut with alum, aluminum sulfate. Bakers use alum to bleach cheap dark flour so it looks expensive, and to make the bread hold more water, increasing its weight so they can charge you more. Alum causes chronic gastritis and destroys your digestion, but hey, at least the bread looks pure. Even the butter isn't safe. As you spread it, you notice it doesn't quite melt right. That's likely because it isn't butter at all. It is a concoction of rendered animal fat, often from questionable sources, mixed with potato flour and colored with chemicals to mimic the golden hue of dairy. If you decide to add some fruit preserves to your alum bread, you might be spreading a gel made from boiled turnip mash, flavored with artificial essences and dyed bright red with aniline dyes derived from coal tar. You finish your meal feeling full, but arguably less nourished than when you started. A dull cramp begins to tighten in your stomach. You dismiss it as indigestion, unaware that the alum is reacting with your stomach acid. You stand up, ready to inspect the rest of the house, perhaps the kitchen where this meal was prepared. You head down the narrow servant stairs into the basement level. The air gets hotter, thicker, and smells of sulfur. You are entering the domain of the cook, but you are also walking into a fire trap. The kitchen is dominated by a massive cast iron range that burns coal continuously. It is a technological marvel of the era, but it turns the room into a furnace. As you step onto the flagstone floor, you spot a glint of green in the corner, a copper pot that hasn't been tinned properly. Cooking acidic foods in that could lead to verdigris poisoning, yet another hazard to dodge. But the kitchen has bigger dangers than dirty pots. You see the scullery maid scrubbing dishes in water that looks murky. There is no tap water here. The water is drawn from a cistern that might be sitting right next to the cesspit in the backyard. Cross-contamination isn't just a risk, it's a guarantee. You have survived the bedroom and the breakfast table, but as the heat of the kitchen wraps around you, you realize that the day has barely begun and your body is already fighting a chemical war. The Great Wash and the Exploding Toilet. Leaving the suffocating heat of the kitchen, you enter the scullery. If it is a Monday, you have walked into the Great Wash. In the modern world, doing laundry is a passive activity. You press a button and walk away. In the Victorian era, it is a physically brutal, dangerous, and toxic event that took 4 days to complete. The room is filled with blinding steam. You see women with raw, red hands scrubbing linen against washboards until their knuckles bleed. But it's the chemicals that catch your attention. To get those white shirts blindingly white, they aren't just using soap. They're using lye, a caustic substance that can severely burn skin and blind you if it splashes in your eyes. They might also be using urine for the ammonia to bleach stubborn stains. The air smells acrid, stinging your nostrils. You step back to avoid a maid carrying a massive pot of boiling water. One slip on the flagstone floors could result in third-degree burns, a common and often fatal household accident. But the danger isn't just in the water, it is in your clothes. You are wearing cotton and layers of crinoline to maintain that fashionable silhouette. These fabrics are highly flammable. In a house lit by open fires and candles, you're essentially a walking wick. If you stand too close to the copper boiler or a fireplace to dry off, your skirt could catch fire instantly. In this era, death by burning is a leading cause of mortality for women, fueled by the very fashion that defines them. Feeling overwhelmed by the chemical fumes, you realize you need to use the bathroom again. This time, you decide to try the indoor water closet, WC, installed in a small closet under the stairs. It is a sign of modernity and wealth. You open the door and are hit with a smell that is far worse than the chamber pot. It smells like rotten eggs, hydrogen sulfide. The plumbing in your Victorian house is in its infancy. There are no sophisticated S-traps or ventilation pipes to stop gases from the sewer or the cesspit in the garden from traveling back up the pipes and into your home. This isn't just unpleasant, it's lethal. These sewer gases contain methane and hydrogen sulfide. If the concentration is high enough, they can cause asphyxiation, but there is a more violent risk. You strike a match to light the gas bracket on the wall because the closet is dark. You hesitate. If the methane buildup from the sewer is dense enough, that single spark could ignite the gas. There are documented cases in the 19th century of toilets literally exploding, blowing the occupant off the seat and destroying the room. You decide to blow out the match and do your business in the dark, holding your breath to avoid inhaling the toxic fumes. You wash your hands quickly, but even the soap is suspect, often made from rendered animal fats that might carry disease if not boiled properly. You rush out of the water closet, gasping for fresh air, which is still filled with coal dust. It is only midday. You have navigated poison walls, embalmed milk, caustic laundry fumes, and an explosive toilet. Now you have some free time. You decide to head to the parlor for some leisure, perhaps to read a book or admire the decor. You don't realize that the very objects meant to entertain you are silently plotting your demise. The parlor, a library of death. You retreat to the parlor, the heart of the Victorian home. This is the room designed to impress guests, filled with curiosities, plush furniture, and heavy drapes. You sink into an overstuffed armchair, hoping for a moment of peace. The room is dimly lit by the gasoliers overhead, casting long, flickering shadows that seem to dance in the corners. You pick up a book from the side table to distract yourself. It is a beautiful edition, bound in a vibrant emerald green cloth that feels almost velvety to the touch. As you turn the pages, perhaps licking your finger to separate the paper, you are unknowingly microdosing yourself with poison again. That stunning green pigment on the book cover is the same Shields green found in your bedroom wallpaper. In the Victorian era, arsenic was used in everything, from dresses and artificial flowers to the very book bindings in your hands. A child reading this book, or a reader with a nervous habit of biting their nails, could easily ingest a fatal dose over time. You put the book down, your fingertips faintly stained with green dust, and wipe them on your trousers, spreading the toxin further. Your eyes wander to the hat rack near the door, where a sleek black silk top hat rests. It looks distinguished, the mark of a gentleman. But if you were to wear it, you would be wrapping a band of neurotoxin around your forehead. The felt used to make these hats was processed using mercury nitrate to separate the fur from the pelt. This process turned hatters, and the men who wore their creations excessively, into trembling wrecks. The mercury slowly absorbed into the skin, leading to erethism, a condition characterized by uncontrollable tremors, pathological shyness, and eventual insanity. This is the grim reality behind the phrase, "mad as a hatter." In this house, even high fashion destroys the brain. You lean back, but the air in the parlor feels heavy and stale. Above you, the gas lamps hiss softly.
While gas lighting was a revolution that extended the day, the gas pipes in Victorian homes were notoriously leaky. You are breathing in unburnt coal gas, which contains carbon monoxide and sulfur. This doesn't just make you feel nauseous and give you a splitting headache, it affects your mind. Many historians believe that the Victorian obsession with ghosts and hauntings was partially fueled by carbon monoxide poisoning. The gas leaks caused hallucinations, paranoia, and a feeling of being watched. As you sit there, lightheaded and dizzy, the shadows in the room seem to stretch and move on their own. Are you seeing a ghost, or is the house simply suffocating you? To make matters worse, the room is filled with taxidermy, stuffed birds and squirrels, frozen in lifelike poses. These, too, were preserved with arsenical soaps to keep insects away. If you were to dust them or touch them, you'd be exposing yourself to yet another source of poison. Your head is pounding now. The combination of the arsenic wallpaper, the lead face cream, the alum bread, and the leaking gas is taking its toll. You feel feverish and weak. You decide you need medical attention. You need something to soothe your nerves and stop the pain. You decide to open the family medicine cabinet. You have no idea that you are about to make the most dangerous decision of the day. The medicine cabinet. Poison as a cure. Your head is throbbing from the gas fumes, and your stomach churns from the alum-filled bread. You stagger to the medicine cabinet, desperately seeking relief. In the 21st century, you'd find aspirin or ibuprofen. In the Victorian era, you are staring at a collection of hard narcotics and lethal poisons, all sold over the counter without a prescription. The government has almost no regulation over what goes into a bottle as long as it claims to cure something. You reach for a small, dark bottle labeled laudanum. It is a household staple found in every Victorian home, from the poorest slums to the Queen's Palace. It's cheaper than gin and more readily available. You pour a few drops onto a spoon. Laudanum is a tincture of opium mixed with alcohol. It effectively kills your pain, but it also depresses your respiratory system and is wildly addictive. You swallow it. Almost instantly, a warm, fuzzy numbness spreads through your body. You aren't cured, you're high on opium. Next to the laudanum sits a bottle of cough syrup. You pick it up. The label proudly announces it is from the Bayer Company and contains heroin. Yes, heroin! In the Victorian era, it is marketed as a non-addictive substitute for morphine and a safe cough suppressant for children. If you have a tickle in your throat, you are advised to take a spoonful of hard drugs. Speaking of children, you notice a pretty bottle decorated with a pastoral scene, Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. It promises to calm any fussy infant and give mothers a peaceful night's rest. It works like magic. Why? Because each ounce contains 65 milligrams of morphine sulfate. It doesn't just soothe the baby, it puts them into a coma. Tragically, many Victorian children died from overdoses of morphine, often administered by their unknowing mothers.
Infants never woke up from their soothing naps, dying of overdose or starvation because they were too drugged to eat. You were looking at a bottle that was quietly known as the baby killer. Feeling sluggish from the laudanum, you decide you need a pick-me-up to get through the rest of the day. You spot a tonic pill labeled for vitality and strength. You pop one in your mouth. These tonics often contain strychnine, a pesticide used to kill rats. In small doses, strychnine acts as a stimulant, tightening your muscles and making you feel sharp. In reality, it is convulsing your nervous system. Athletes of the time even used it as a performance enhancer, sometimes collapsing mid-race. You close the cabinet, effectively medicated. You have suppressed your cough with heroin, dulled your pain with opium, and stimulated your nerves with rat poison. The symptoms of the gas poisoning and arsenic exposure are now masked by a cocktail of narcotics. You feel invincible, but your body is struggling to keep your heart beating rhythmically. The sun is beginning to set. The fog outside has turned the windows into black mirrors. You decide to check on the nursery before dressing for dinner. You assume the children's room must be the safest place in the house, a sanctuary for the innocent. You couldn't be more wrong. You are about to walk into a room where even the toys can kill. The nursery, a playground of peril. You stumble out of the bedroom and climb the stairs to the nursery, expecting a sanctuary of innocence. The room is painted in soft pastels, hopefully not arsenic-green this time, though there is no guarantee. A nanny is dozing in the corner. On the floor, a toddler is playing with a set of beautifully detailed toy soldiers. They look charming. You kneel to inspect one. It is heavy, solid, and cold. These soldiers are made of pure lead and painted with lead-based pigments. In the Victorian era, safety standards for toys are non-existent. As you watch, the toddler puts the soldier's head in his mouth, a universal habit of children. He is essentially sucking on a neurotoxin. Chronic lead poisoning in Victorian children was rampant, causing developmental delays, seizures, and in severe cases, death. But the toys are just the beginning. You walk over to the crib where an infant is feeding. The baby is holding a peculiar-looking glass bottle, shaped flat like a banjo, with a long, flexible rubber tube leading to the nipple. The baby can feed itself without the nanny holding the bottle, which seems like a brilliant convenience. It is called an Alexandra feeding bottle, but history remembers it by a different name, the murder bottle. You look closely at the rubber tube. It looks clouded and grimy inside. In the 1870s, there is no way to sterilize these tubes. They are porous and impossible to clean properly. Inside that warm, wet rubber tunnel, bacteria are thriving, a deadly cocktail of cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis. Every time the baby takes a sip, they are ingesting a concentrated dose of lethal pathogens. Doctors of the era screamed against them, calling them infanticide by convenience, but they remained popular because they kept babies quiet. You instinctively want to snatch the bottle away, knowing it is a slow-acting death sentence. Then there is the clothing. The children are dressed in long white nightgowns made of flannelette. It is a cotton fabric brushed to feel like wool, soft, warm, and cheap. It is also one of the most flammable fabrics ever created. In a house lit by open fires and candles, this is catastrophic. If a child wanders too close to the nursery fireplace, the nap on the fabric acts like a fuse. Flannelette doesn't just burn, it flashes. A spark can turn a child into a torch in seconds. This became such a crisis that the Flannelette Act was eventually passed to regulate the fabric. But in 1870, your children are sleeping in kindling. Even the wallpaper borders are dangerous. To teach children their alphabet, the walls are often decorated with educational illustrations, but the pigments used for bright reds, vermilion, which contains mercury, and yellows, chrome yellow, which contains lead, mean that even the walls are toxic to the touch. You back out of the room horrified. The nursery is not a shelter. It is a minefield targeting the most vulnerable. You need to get out of this house, but the sun has set and dinner is being served soon. You must dress for the evening, a process that involves reshaping your skeleton and crushing your internal organs. Dressed to kill, the corset and the crinoline. The dinner bell will ring soon, and you must change into formal evening wear. If you thought the morning routine was brutal, the evening toilet is a torture device disguised as fashion. You stand before the mirror as a maid tightens the laces of your corset. You grip the bedpost for support. The aim is a fashionably tiny waist, but the cost is your internal anatomy. As the laces pull tighter, you feel your lower ribs being forced inward. Your liver and stomach are pushed upwards against your diaphragm, while your intestines are squeezed downward. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's medically dangerous. Your lung capacity is reduced significantly, forcing you to take shallow, rapid breaths. This is why Victorian women were prone to fainting spells or the vapors. It wasn't emotional fragility, it was hypoxia, a lack of oxygen to the brain. You are literally being strangled by your underwear. Once the corset is fixed, you step into the cage, the crinoline. It is a vast, bell-shaped structure made of steel hoops that holds your skirt out wide. It makes you look like a floating cloud, but it turns you into a walking hazard. The crinoline is light and bouncy, but it has its own mind. A gust of wind can blow you into traffic, or more commonly, into a fireplace. In an era of open fires, the crinoline is deadly. Thousands of women burned to death in the mid-19th century because the back of their massive skirts brushed against a grate while they were warming themselves, unaware that they were on fire until the flames engulfed them. You have to move with calculated precision, navigating the furniture like a ship trying to avoid icebergs. Now for the dress itself. You choose the most fashionable color of the season, Paris green. It's a stunning, vibrant emerald shade that glows under the gaslight. You look magnificent. However, just like your wallpaper, this fabric is dyed with arsenic. As the evening progresses and you begin to perspire in the hot, crowded dining room, the sweat on your skin will react with the dye. The arsenic will leach out of the fabric and absorb directly into your pores. By the end of the night, you might notice a painful red rash developing where the dress touches your skin, under your arms, around your neck. You will scratch it, breaking the skin and allowing more poison to enter your bloodstream. The women who made these dresses suffered far worse. They often died horrific deaths, vomiting green bile, their fingers fused with necrotic ulcers. But tonight, you are simply wearing the poison. You descend the stairs for dinner, your vision slightly tunneling from the lack of oxygen. You look beautiful, fashionable, and wealthy. You are also a flammable, toxic, oxygen-deprived time bomb. You enter the dining room where the air is thick with the smell of roast meat and cigar smoke. You sit down, but the corset makes it impossible to eat more than a few bites. You are exhausted, poisoned, and starving. You just want this day to end.
Then comes the dessert course. A wobble of bright green jelly is placed before you. It is a masterpiece of Victorian culinary art, a towering, trembling mold of gelatin. By now, you know the drill. That vibrant green isn't lime, it is copper or arsenic. But look at the red candies decorating the side. They are colored with vermilion, cinnabar, which is derived from mercury. Or perhaps the yellow marzipan fruits, colored with lead chromate. The dessert table is essentially a periodic table of heavy metals. You are feeling nauseous now. The corset is digging into your ribs, preventing you from taking a full breath. The air is thick with smoke and sulfur. The wine is making your head spin, not from alcohol, but from toxicity. You look around the table. The other guests are flushed, their eyes glassy. They look the picture of health and conviviality, but they are all slowly being poisoned. Suddenly, a woman across the table stands up. She looks pale, her hand fluttering to her throat. She sways and collapses onto the floor. "She's just fainted," someone says dismissively. "Too much excitement." They loosen her corset and carry her to a fainting couch. No one suspects the carbon monoxide, the arsenic dress, or the rotten meat. It is just another Tuesday in a Victorian home. You decide you need to escape the suffocating dining room. You excuse yourself, claiming a need for fresh air. You head towards the conservatory, the glass house attached to the back of the home. It seems like a safe haven filled with plants. But in a Victorian house, even nature is engineered to kill. The conservatory, a garden of gas. Desperate for a breath of air that doesn't smell of roast beef and coal smoke, you slip away from the dinner party and head toward the conservatory. This glass-walled extension is the pride and joy of the Victorian home, a symbol of status and imperial reach. It is filled with exotic ferns, orchids, and palms brought back from the furthest corners of the British Empire. You step through the French doors, expecting a cool, oxygen-rich breeze. Instead, you are hit with a wall of humid, chemical-laden heat that makes your head spin even faster. The first thing you notice is the smell. It isn't the scent of blooming jasmine or roses. It is a sharp, acrid odor that stings your eyes. You see a gardener at the far end of the room, pumping a bellows over a delicate orchid. He isn't watering it. He is fumigating it. In the Victorian era, maintaining these expensive tropical plants in a cold, gray climate required a war against pests. And the weapon of choice? Nicotine.
Not the small amount found in a cigarette. They used pure, concentrated liquid nicotine, boiled over small lamps to create a vapor that would fill the glasshouse and kill aphids and mites. It was incredibly effective. It was also a potent neurotoxin for humans. As you stand there breathing in the fresh air of the conservatory, you are inhaling a pesticide that can cause vomiting, tremors, and cardiac failure. Gardeners frequently collapsed and died in these glass boxes, overcome by the very fumes they used to save the ferns. You cough, your throat burning, and realize this Eden is actually a gas chamber. You move away from the fumigation zone to admire the plants. You reach out to touch a lush, broad-leafed plant with interesting speckled patterns. It looks tropical and inviting. This is likely Dieffenbachia, commonly known as dumb cane. It was a favorite in Victorian collections. If you were to get the sap on your fingers and then touch your mouth or eyes, the calcium oxalate crystals in the plant would cause your throat to swell shut, rendering you unable to speak, hence the name, or breathe. But the plants aren't just poisonous, they are deceptive. You might spot a beautiful vine with purple flowers, aconitum or monk's hood. It looks stunning against the glass walls. It contains aconitine, a poison so deadly that even touching the leaves without gloves can cause numbness and heart arrhythmia. The Victorians didn't child-proof their gardens. They curated collections of biological weapons because they looked pretty. As you navigate the narrow pathways between the overflowing pots, you glance up at the ceiling. It is a masterpiece of cast iron and plate glass. But look closer. The glass panes are heavy, and the iron frames are constantly expanding and contracting with the heat of the day and the cold of the night. In 1870, safety glass does not exist. A sudden hailstorm or a structural failure could bring jagged guillotines of glass raining down on you. Even the floor is a hazard. To keep the humidity high for the orchids, the tiled floor is kept constantly wet. In your leather-soled shoes or heeled boots, it's like walking on ice. One slip could send you crashing into a stand of cactus, or worse, through a glass pane. The humidity is wrecking your hairstyle and making your heavy wool clothes feel like a wet blanket. You feel suffocated. The combination of the nicotine vapor, the heat, and the poisonous flora is too much. You need to get out of this glass coffin. You decide to head back into the main house, perhaps to find a quiet corner in the library or the study. You assume a room filled with books and sturdy furniture must be safe. You are wrong. You are about to enter a room where the very light can kill you. The study. The hissing death. You retreat from the poisonous jungle of the conservatory into the master study. This is a masculine sanctuary, lined with leather-bound books and heavy mahogany furniture. It feels sturdy and safe. You walk over to the desk to write a letter, perhaps a final will and testament given how your day is going. To see what you are doing, you reach up and turn the valve on the gas lamp attached to the wall. With a pop and a hiss, the flame flares to life, casting a stark white light that flickers ominously. You are now sitting beneath the greatest technological advancement and the greatest health hazard of the Victorian home: coal gas. Unlike modern natural gas, Victorian gas was produced by baking coal in an oxygen-free oven. The resulting vapor was a dirty, toxic cocktail of hydrogen, methane, sulfur, and a massive amount of carbon monoxide. As the lamp burns, it doesn't just produce light, it consumes the oxygen in the room at a terrifying rate. A single gas burner consumes as much oxygen as 5 people. In a closed study with the windows shut to keep out the London fog, you are slowly suffocating. But the danger isn't just in the burning, it is in the leaking. The gas pipes running through the walls were often made of cheap metal or even old musket barrels left over from wars. They leaked constantly. That haunted house feeling, the sensation of being watched, the dread, that is carbon monoxide poisoning messing with your brain chemistry. The sulfur in the gas reacts with the moisture in the air to create mild sulfuric acid,
which is why the leather bindings on the books behind you are crumbling and the silver watch in your pocket is turning black. If it's doing that to metal and leather, imagine what it's doing to your lungs. You sit at the desk, rubbing your temples. The headache is blinding now. You look at the walls. They are covered in a rich, velvety, dark red wallpaper known as flocked wallpaper. To achieve that raised velvet texture, manufacturers glued millions of tiny wool fibers onto the paper. It looks luxurious. In reality, it is a sponge for filth. That velvety texture traps dust, soot, and moisture, creating a perfect breeding ground for mold and bacteria. And yes, the red dye likely contains mercury or arsenic. But worse, as the wallpaper ages, the glue fails, and those tiny, toxic, dust-covered wool fibers detach and float into the air. You are breathing in a microscopic blizzard of poisonous wool dust with every sigh. Suddenly, the gas light flickers and dims. A draft from the chimney has disrupted the pressure. If the flame goes out but the valve remains open, the room will fill with explosive gas in minutes. You rush to adjust it, your hand shaking from the neurotoxins you've absorbed throughout the day. You manage to stabilize the flame, but your heart is racing. You realize you cannot stay awake any longer. The house has beaten you. You need sleep. You decide to head upstairs to your bedroom for the night. You assume climbing stairs is a simple task. But in a Victorian house, the staircase is a treacherous architectural feature designed without building codes, leading you into the final deadly chapter of your 24 hours. The staircase of doom and the attic fire trap. You leave the suffocating atmosphere of the study, relieved to finally head to bed. But standing between you and your bedroom is one of the most common killers in the Victorian home. The staircase. In the flickering gas light, the grand staircase looks majestic, sweeping upwards into the shadows. But look closer. The steps are polished to a lethal shine with beeswax. The carpet runner is held down by loose brass rods that can easily detach and send you tumbling. For a modern person, climbing stairs is mundane. For you, dressed in 1870s fashion, it is an extreme sport. If you're a woman, your vision of your feet is completely blocked by your crinoline and layers of petticoats. You are ascending blindly.
Neck. Falling downstairs was a leading cause of accidental death in the home, often listed on death certificates simply as misadventure. But if you think the main staircase is dangerous, peer behind the green baize door that separates the family from the servants. There you will find the back stairs, a tight, steep spiral staircase hidden inside the walls. These steps are often unlit, narrow, and uneven. Servants, often young girls as young as 12, are expected to sprint up and down these stairs, carrying buckets of coal, heavy trays of food, or jugs of boiling water. One slip here doesn't just mean a fall, it means being scalded to death by the water you were carrying. You reach the upper landing, breathless. The air here is colder. Above you lies the attic, the domain of the servants. Curiosity draws you to peek upward. The conditions there are a stark contrast to the velvet-lined poison boxes below. There is no insulation. In the summer, the slate roof turns the attic into an oven. In the winter, ice forms on the inside of the walls. But the real terror of the upper floors isn't the temperature, it is fire. The Victorian house is a vertical chimney. The kitchen is in the basement with a roaring fire. Gas lights burn on every floor. Open fireplaces crackle in the bedrooms. If a fire starts downstairs, perhaps a spark from the kitchen range or a curtain blowing into a gas jet, the flames and smoke will rush upward, following the stairwell. There are no fire escapes. There are no smoke detectors. If a fire breaks out while everyone is asleep, the servants in the attic are doomed. They are trapped at the highest point of a burning building with only one narrow wooden exit that is likely already on fire.
It was a grim reality that in many house fires, the family might escape from the lower floors, but the staff in the attic perished, trapped against the roof. You shudder, turning away from the dark stairs leading to the attic. You walk down the hallway toward your bedroom, the floorboards creaking under your feet. The shadows seem to stretch and grab at you. You're exhausted, your body aches from the corset, your head swims from the gas, and your skin itches from the arsenic dress. You just want to sleep. But as you open your bedroom door, you realize that going to bed involves one final gauntlet of hazards. The bedtime ritual, sleeping with fire. You finally close the door to your bedroom, shutting out the dark, gas-filled hallway. You're exhausted in a way that modern humans rarely experience, a bone-deep fatigue born of heavy clothes, toxic fumes, and malnutrition. But the day isn't done with you yet. You have to survive the night. The room is freezing. The fire in the grate has burned down to glowing embers, casting a weak orange light across the arsenic-green wallpaper. To combat the damp chill, the maid has prepared your bed. She has used a warming pan, a long-handled brass container filled with live, red-hot coals from a fire. She slid this pan between your linen sheets to heat the mattress. It sounds cozy, doesn't it? But in reality, you're climbing into a tinderbox. If the maid was careless and left the pan in one spot for too long, the sheets might be scorched and smoldering, waiting for a draft of air to burst into flame. Or worse, the latch on the pan could be loose. If you toss and turn in your sleep and kick the pan, some people left them at the foot of the bed, you could spill live coals onto your straw-stuffed mattress. You would wake up engulfed in fire. You strip off your heavy layers, shivering violently as the cold air hits your skin. You put on a long nightshirt. Whatever you do, don't stand too close to the candle on the bedside table. Your nightwear is likely cotton or linen, untreated and highly flammable. A single brush against the flame, and you will go up like a Roman candle. You blow out the candle, plunging the room into pitch blackness. You climb into the high four-poster bed and draw the heavy velvet curtains around you. You are now enclosed in a room within a room. The Victorians did this to keep out drafts, but they were also obsessed with the miasm theory. They believed that disease was carried in bad air or night smells. So they sealed their windows shut and drew their bed curtains tight to block out the deadly fresh air. Ironically, by trying to keep the bad air in, they sealed the real danger in. As you lie there, the dying embers in the fireplace are still releasing carbon monoxide. Because the chimney flue is cold and the ventilation is poor, the gas sinks. Meanwhile, inside your velvet tent, you are rebreathing your own exhaled carbon dioxide. The oxygen levels in your small enclosure are dropping by the minute. You pull the heavy wool blankets up to your chin. These blankets are rarely washed, maybe once a year. They are heavy with dust, mites, and the sweat of previous sleepers. If you have asthma or allergies, your throat begins to tighten immediately. You close your eyes, praying for sleep, but the house is alive. You hear scuttling in the walls. Rats. They are everywhere in Victorian London, navigating the spaces between the floorboards, carrying fleas that transmit typhus. You hear a scratch, scratch, right behind your headboard. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through your jaw, a toothache. You've been ignoring it all day, but the sugar-laden tea and the cold air have woken the nerve. You realize with horror that you might need a dentist. And in 1870, a visit to the dentist is often more dangerous than the toothache itself. You lie there in the dark, clutching your cheek, wondering if you can survive the pain until morning or if you should risk the medicine in the cabinet again. The midnight emergency, the butcher with a badge. The pain in your jaw is blinding. It throbs in rhythm with your heartbeat, radiating up to your ear. In the 21st century, you would find an emergency dental clinic or pop some antibiotics. In 1870, a toothache is a life-threatening event. As you lie in the dark, clutching your cheek, you contemplate calling for help. But then you remember what help looks like. If you summon a dentist, he won't bring a sterilized drill and Novocaine. He will bring the dental key. It looks less like a medical instrument and more like a bottle opener or a torture device. The dentist inserts the metal claw over your rotting tooth, twists the handle to lock it in place, and then turns it with brute force. There is no precision. The goal is to leverage the tooth out of the gum. The problem is it often slips. Instead of extracting the tooth, it frequently shatters the crown, leaving the infected roots buried deep in your jaw. Worse, the force required is so violent that it often fractures the jawbone itself, leading to massive infection, facial deformity, or fatal sepsis. And anesthesia? If you're lucky, you might get a rag soaked in chloroform, which can stop your heart if the dosage is wrong, or a shot of cocaine, which starts a crippling addiction. You decide the pain is better than the cure. But the pain in your stomach, the arsenic, the alum, the lead, is getting worse. You feel like you are being stabbed from the inside. What if you call a doctor? The doctor arrives in his black frock coat. You notice the coat is stiff and stained with old blood and pus. In 1870, a doctor's dirty coat is a badge of honor. It shows he's busy and experienced. He approaches your bed. He does not wash his hands. The concept of germ theory, proposed by Louis Pasteur and Lister, is still new and widely mocked by the medical establishment. Most doctors believe in laudable pus and think hand washing is a waste of time. This man has just come from an autopsy or a childbirth ward where puerperal fever is rampant. Now he is about to stick those same unwashed fingers into your mouth or press them against your open sores to examine you. He is essentially a delivery system for bacteria. He opens his bag. If he decides you have excess blood causing your fever, he might suggest bloodletting, using leeches or a dirty lancet to drain your vital fluids, weakening you further. Or he might prescribe a blue pill. It sounds harmless, but it's a marble-sized ball of pure mercury. It will make you salivate excessively, which they think is the toxins leaving your body, make your teeth fall out, and slowly destroy your brain. You look at the doctor's grimy fingernails and the terrifying instruments in his bag. You realize that in a Victorian house, the safest medical decision is often to do nothing and pray. You decline his offer of a calmative, likely more opium, and send him away. You are alone again. The fire is dead. The room is freezing. The rats are scratching. Your body is a vessel of pain, but you are still alive. You watch the crack in the curtains, desperate for the